Vote for whom? Election in India for Lok Sabha and state assemblies is round the corner. The TV channels will be flooded with election propaganda. Mudslinging is the order of the day. No one knows for sure who speaks the truth and who pours out lies. Unethical practices superabound. So much of time, energy, and money is wasted on worthless speeches. Charges and counter-charges of politicians make the newspaper headlines. Most of the staff will be news-sitting. The poor and illiterate are cheated. The youth are confused. What is God's message to us Christians at that hour in India? There are preachers and Christian leaders who motivate Christians to pray in favor of or against some politicians and parties. Bible does not endorse such practices. Each political party has its strengths and weaknesses. We must pray for the healing and welfare of the nation, and God in His wisdom will choose the leadership suitable for the situation. The insight King Nebuchadnezzar received following the miraculous deliverance of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the fiery furnace is profound. He wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages, "The Most High rules in the kingdom of man, gives it to whomever He will, and sets over it the lowest of men. And those who walk in pride, He is able to humble." Daniel chapter 4, 17b, 37b. Let Herod rule or Pilate rule. It matters not to Jesus. Let Felix rule or Agrippa rule. It matters not to Paul. This should be our attitude as Christians. There's hardly any politician or party without corruption and ungodliness. Jesus took the whip not to drive away the Romans, but to cleanse the church. John chapter 2, verse 13-17. There's more corruption and wickedness inside the church than outside. We the salt are losing our saltiness. We the light are losing our brightness. Matthew chapter 5, 13-15. Judgment must begin at the house of God. 1 Peter chapter 4, 17a. God deals first with the church. Revelation chapter 2 and 3. And only then with the nations. Revelation chapter 6 onwards. As the church goes, so goes the world. When the church repents, the country will be healed. 2 Chronicle chapter 7, 14. If God in His sovereign wisdom allows an anti-Christian party to come to power, it will be an occasion to show forth His power on a larger scale. If Pharaoh, who crushed God's people, comes to power, the miracle of the dividing of a sea will happen. Exodus 14, 21, 19. If Nebuchadnezzar, who took away the articles from the temple of God to that of idols, comes to power, the miracle of quenching the violence of fire will happen. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1-2. Hebrew chapter 11, 34a. If Darius, who banned prayers to God, comes to power, the miracle of stopping the mouths of lions will happen. Daniel chapter 6, 6-9. If Romans, who persecuted Christian preachers, comes to power, the miracle of opening of prison doors will happen. Acts chapter 12, 1, 6, 7. Let's make the prayer of the persecuted early church ours. Acts chapter 4, 23, 31. Then signs and wonders shall follow, and we will preach the gospel with greater boldness. The large sections of evangelical Christians in America prayed against Mr. Barack Obama, but God gave him 2 consecutive presidential terms. Let's not be foolish enough to advise God whom He must make our president, prime minister, or chief minister. Romans 11, 33-35. Let God act according to His determined counsel and foreknowledge. Acts chapter 2, 23. There are unseen powers behind political leadership. The present crisis in the country are a spiritual warfare. Ephesians chapter 6, 12. Pray for all the candidates in the fray. Ask God to touch the nation's millions of voters. Make your prayers specific by focusing on the following. 1. Righteousness. We must have leaders who are free from corruption and selfish interest. They must be men and women of sincerity and integrity, free from hypocrisy. This may look too ideal to expect in politics, But God's word emphatically declares, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a shame to any people. Proverbs chapter 14:34. There's no other way. Number B, secularism. The Indian Constitution provides freedom of religion to practice and propagate one's faith. But there's a steady erosion of secular values in the nation. It's impossible to be a faithful follower of Christ without obeying His great commission. Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them, teaching them. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19-20. At the same time, let's confess to God that we have not taken full advantage of the wind when it was favorable. C. Upliftment of the poor. Political instability affects the nation's economic development. The multitudes under the poverty line keep swelling. Their cries goes unheard. God blesses a government which has pity on the poor. Daniel chapter 4, verse 27. Each Christian must confess to God his failure to feed the poor Lazarus at his doorstep. Luke chapter 16, 19-21. Each Christian family must confess its failure to care for the widows and orphans in its street and surroundings. Joshua 1, 27.